Hello and welcome to Ecolor. It's been called an existential threat, an event so devastating that civilization may cease to exist. But is climate change really going to bring about the four horsemen of the apocalypse? Today we're going to explore one of these horses, Pestilence. So, will climate change really cause the next pandemic? In order to answer this, I think we need to break this question down even further. So, is air pollution really a big deal? Will thawing of permafrost and ice caps bring back previously extinct pathogens? And lastly, will climate change cause vectors for disease to spread them even further? So, to answer the first question, the process of burning fossil fuels is an extremely messy one. It often results in the production of fine particulates. So these are things such as soot, which are 2.5 microns wide, so very tiny indeed. And as we burn these fossil fuels, we produce more and more of these particulates. This is mostly a problem in densely populated cities like London. So due to the high road traffic conditions, we end up with very large concentrations of pollution. So high levels of air pollution has and will continue to lead to increasing numbers and cases of respiratory diseases. So these are like asthma and chronic bronchitis. So this has all been stated by Orru et al. Currently, it is said that there's so 7 million deaths a year are attributed to poor air pollution. So it is very easy to forget that these are preventable deaths. And if we don't need any more reasons to fight climate change, then here's another one. This excess death is unacceptable, to say the least. So here in the developed world, we often see smog in places like India and don't stop to actually think that this could be commonplace in Europe or America. But sadly, in 2013, a 9-year-old girl from southeast London very sadly passed away due to a severe and fatal asthma attack. So recently, this has been attributed to the high levels of air pollution which are found in London. This was, of course, after an inquiry into the incident. The reality of this is that hospitalizations and deaths are looking to be more commonplace. So we're going to see more and more incidences of fatal asthma attacks because of this air pollution. Because, of course, this air pollution is only going to exacerbate the condition. And we are seeing a global trend of we're seeing more and more asthmatics. So, to put it bluntly, this is a big deal, and every year a lot of people are losing their lives because of it. So the second question I posed was, will the thawing of permafrost and ice caps release previously extinct pathogens? So you'll know by now burning fossil fuels for energy doesn't just release these particulates I mentioned earlier, but also carbon dioxide, causing the global warming effect, which is affecting more than just your lungs. So this warming subsequently causes the melting of the polar ice caps and the permafrost in places like Siberia. So the thawing of this permafrost has the potential to release these pathogens that we have allegedly conquered. So I know this sounds like science fiction, but it is a serious matter. So in fact, in August of 2016, on the Yamal Peninsula in Siberia, a dozen people very suddenly fell ill, and one child even died. So this death was ultimately attributed to the boy coming into contact with an infected reindeer carcass. So this carcass was contaminated with anthrax, which the boy was ultimately exposed to. So the fact of the matter is that more and more permafrost is defrosting each year, with temperatures rising 3 times faster in the Arctic Circle compared to the rest of the Earth, making spillover events like these even more likely. So these events are not just contained to anthrax, of course, but the reality is that we just don't know what is contained under that ice in that permafrost. So, for example, if a body was infected with a contagious agent such as the Spanish flu or smallpox, for example, we could be dealing with a much worse pandemic than, or epidemic, should I say, than a boy coming into contact with anthrax. But I should say, before you start panicking, these spiller events are very rare, and in many previous pandemics, we developed vaccines and treatments, so we would never be starting from scratch again. But this is still very much a threat, and we should be taking it seriously. So, on to the last question. Will climate change cause vectors for disease to spread even further? So, on the subject of bringing things back from the past, do you remember cholera? I know it's still quite a big problem in the developing world because of poor sanitation, but the point is that severe weather events are becoming more and more frequent, and they tend to cause cross contamination between drinking water and human waste, so things like people's feces. And this contamination makes perfect conditions for cholera to flourish, so much like it did in the 1800s in places like London. The reality is that cholera is currently near to non existent in the developed world and is likely to make a large comeback if these adverse weather events aren't prepared for or aren't even stopped. So not only that, but the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change says that due to increased local ocean temperatures in Southeast Asia, for example, there is evidence to show that there is increased toxicity of the bacterium. So this means that people infected with the bacterium, so cholera, it is packing more of a punch, which is very much alarming. So people are getting worse disease as well as there being more disease. So these weather events where there's cross-contamination between human feces and drinking water tends to be things like flooding. So much like flooding becoming more and more common due to climate change and being just one example as a vector for disease, climate change is also helping to alter the environments which are habitable for mosquitoes. So these mosquitoes can be infected with dengue fever or malaria. This is because the two things mosquitoes love is a warm environment and lots of rainfall. So where there's lots of pools of water which can form, so this lets them breed, and it spreads from there basically. This spread of habitable land for the mosquitoes means that if places like the UK continue to heat up and continue to remain wet, malaria may actually become a problem here in the UK, and most certainly in other parts of the developed world where it isn't a problem at the moment. So, on top of this, the IPCC, the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, investigated the effect of climate change on dengue fever, which has very similar epidemiology to malaria. So they identified that up to 1/3 of the world may actually become have favourable conditions for dengue fever by 2085. So that puts 5 to 6 billion people at risk of falling ill to the disease. So that's compared to 3.5 billion people which are at risk of the disease at the moment. So, in conclusion, the actual process of burning fossil fuels produces particulates and toxic gases, leading to the worsening of many respiratory conditions. Of course, this is when the patient actually breathes in these pollutants and they find their way into the lungs. But as well as just this effect on our lungs, there is the greenhouse gas from things like methane and carbon dioxide, released from these fossil fuels, resulting in the heating of the planet and the melting of the permafrost. So this paves the way, allowing for the possibility of a resurgence of pathogens we have thought to have already conquered. So an example of this is anthrax, like that boy that died came into contact with anthrax. So this global warming is also altering our environment, so it's creating more and more adverse weather events, which allows our drinking water to be contaminated, especially in floods. So this creates an environment in which cholera could very well make its way back to the developed world if we start to see more and more flooding, making this environment more possible. As well as this, vectors such as mosquitoes may also migrate into newly inhabitable regions in the developed world. So, due to the warming of the climate, and in some places it'll be more humid, this allows malaria and dengue fever to come with the mosquitoes, to migrate with the mosquitoes. If you've made it this far, please do us a favour, give us a like and subscribe. Again, we are Ecolor ltd. You can find more about this article on our website, as well as eco-friendly products. So our website is ecolorltd.co.uk. The link is in the description. For each product that we sell, we promise to plant 3 trees, and for more information about this, please check our website again. Thanks for watching.